Ready when you are, sir.
Good evening. Welcome to the March 5th, 2015 meeting of the Planning Commission of the City of West Sacramento. As always, we always begin our meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance, and I would like to call Commissioner Austin to lead us in that. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have a special item on the agenda this evening. We have the swearing in of new Planning Commissioner. Would Alex Kelter please come up? And Katie will be swearing you in this evening. And before we start, if you can make sure your microphone is on. I think I see the red light. Good.
Good evening. Commissioner Alexander Kelter, if you'll please stand, raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Alexander Kelter,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I will take this obligation freely
that I will take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
and that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
Thank you and congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes.
You got all the words right.
Okay, thank you. And now we move into presentations by the public on matters not on the agenda, but within the jurisdiction of the commission. If anyone else in the audience would like to speak, there are requests to speak. They look like this. They're over on the side wall over there. And please hand them to the clerk. I would like to note that the commission is prohibited by law from discussing items that are not on the agenda but brought to the commission. I have one request to speak. Kirk Talon. Please come up and please state your name.
Good evening. My name is Kirk Talon. I'm a resident at Southport. I've been a resident here for 10 years. I'm a retired firefighter, City of Davis. I actually worked at Station 33, so I responded into West Sacramento and the Great Alarms. I'm very familiar with the town. I've been inside a lot of burning buildings and a lot of medical calls here. I love living in this town. Like I said, I'm retired. This is my forever home. And what I did is a couple of years ago, my wife and I bought a fifth wheel, and I went through the permitting process to be able to store. We had it in a storage place that got tampered with. I just felt better having that, behind my own gate. We found out that you're not allowed to have a second driveway in town. And having been a fire inspector also, I spent some time talking to the folks over at the department right next door. And the solution we came up with, I brought them all kinds of options, trying to work something out. And they allowed me to put honeycomb, fire truck, grade, under the lawn stuff. So what you see there on my driveway, that's all, permitted with this honeycomb stuff. What I'm here to discuss today is that, I don't know what to call it, is the mowing strip, the city grass strip over there at the edge of the picture. And because of the slope of the properties here, what happens is that my sprinklers have been off for 4 months. I have a water catching system to water everything. But any water you have, even from dew, will drain over to that flat area that belongs to the city. So what a lot of us have there, it's just a bloody, a muddy mess. that you can't deal with. Even mowing a lawn is kind of a hard thing to do. Had a couple of neighbors came over for dinner and, sunk this deep in the mud. If kids ride their bicycles, the same thing happens. So if you can see the next slide, please. And the next one, just showing, people choose to mow or not mow. No matter what I do, this is what I end up with. Next one also. So I was trying to figure of an option for that. Looking at the clock, it was really quick. And I saw these pavers. So I went to the city and I said, hey, can I put these pavers over that would take care of the drainage and all that? One of the inspectors told me that the person that helped me with the project last year, that if it was porous, I could do it. And so I brought to them some pictures of, it's rock and sand, and then these pavers just sit over it with sand over. There's no concrete or anything like that. I was told by I don't know if you guys are the planning commission, so the planning folks that give you permits, they said they're very aware of the problem. A lot of people have complained about it. They said they're thinking of a solution. It won't be that, they said, but it will be some kind of, different landscaping with bubblers or something like that. We're in a drought, period. That's not going to get any better. City of Sacramento is actually paying people to take their lawns out. So for 2 months, I've been waiting for an answer. They said they don't know what it is. They're aware of it. Nothing's happening. I'm trying to beautify my home. If I can go 2 seconds over, what I found out is that I've talked to 30
That's okay.
to 30 people so far in my neighborhood. And people that have permitted projects like this, a lot of people are taking that mow strip out. So most people are not permitted. And when I asked them why not, I don't believe in just doing things. I should pay the city their due and get an approval for what I'm trying to do. And they say that it's so frustrating to deal with trying to get any variance on this that they just do it, and risk having somebody come over. So I'm just looking for guidance. I'm trying to educate myself in the political process. I've talked to a lot of people in Southport. I can probably come up with 300 signatures of people that are trying to beautify. Some people have pavers already, and it looks beautiful. Their houses look like $1 million. Any direction that you guys can give me help and an education in the political process of how one goes to getting some consideration. I got a lot of, I've dealt with the public for 30 years, and our motto was that public service is the #1 that you get. Very frustrated because the feeling I get as a citizen is when I've dealt with people, they look at me like the guy from the movie, the coffee cup that goes, yeah, we like to help you, but yeah. That's all I've gotten. So anything you guys could do for me, just suggestions or
I think we
an
can
education, I'd
provide
appreciate it.
some guidance. As noted earlier, we're actually not allowed to discuss this evening because
Perfect.
it's not on the agenda. However, if you did feel that you wanted to bring it back in front of us, you could take the matter to staff, and staff could get it onto our agenda.
Okay.
And at that point, we would welcome suggestions, as well as probably provide them as well. And I think the staff probably has some ideas in mind that would not be pavers. If that's not the option, and perhaps they could get that information to you before you would want to come back.
Okay, perfect. So, I'm sorry, the process, I'm trying to learn this. Who do I talk to get
You would
this?
want to get Mr. Tilley's contact information.
Perfect.
And he could direct you.
Thank you so much for your time, I
Or-
really appreciate it.
Or Charlene, who is, I didn't realize was still in the audience.
For the commission's knowledge, we are working on this topic right now. Any changes to how that landscape area is provided is going to require an administrative amendment to the Southport Design Guidelines. And so we have been preparing our intent is to prepare that amendment and have then provide some additional options besides just pure turf in that area for homeowners, in recognizing that, we are in a drought condition and there may be other options that would be, desirable besides just purely turf. So that is underway, now.
Okay, thank you, David. Thank you.
And, just wanted to add something. Also, if, David, if there are other residents that have shared similar concerns, instead of them doing their own thing, maybe they might want to participate in this meeting to contribute any ideas they may have. Just letting them know in some way, Mr. Talon's neighbors.
Yeah, I understand that, and it is also important to remember these areas are within the city's, in the public right-of-way, and so changes to that area do require approval from for encroachment permits.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to correspondence and staff communication from Mr. Tilley.
No further correspondence?
Okay. Disclosure of ex parte communication.
I have had a discussion with outside counsel on item number 2 of the agenda.
Okay, hearing no more. Noted, thank you. And we'll move on to the consent agenda. Looking for a motion on the meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second?
Moved. Sorry, give me 1 second, please. Moved by Commissioner Sternfels, seconded by Vice Chair Guerrero. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. Thank you. Moving on to our regular agenda, item number 2, public workshop regarding the proposed general plan policy amendments related to flood protection. Mr. Tilley.
Yes, thank you, Chair Liebig. This item tonight is indeed a workshop regarding some proposed new policies that we would include in the safety element of the city's general plan. The city, as well as all other cities and communities in California and many other states, maintains a general plan that establishes a broad policy framework across several resource areas that guides decision-making, particularly from a long-term perspective. And one of the elements, elements in the general plan, or just sort of analogous to a chapter of it, if you will, is related to safety. And this is one of the mandated elements under state planning law. So we do have an existing safety element within our current general plan and have for many years, and it does address flood protection on some level, but it doesn't go to where it needs to go to maintain compliance with SB 5 and the related legislation that's been passed at the state level over the last several years. When SB 5 was passed, it mandated many things for local governments to include in their general plan, and also directed the Department of Water Resources to prepare various planning documents, flood management maps, particularly in our region, which of course is very much prone to flooding and significant events. So the city is mandated to include various policies in its general plan to help comply with the flood directives, including in the state plan of flood control. And so I sort of provided the FAQ that came from the Department of Water Resources about how to implement SB 5 is attachment 1 to the staff report tonight. And then, of course, we have proposed the draft policies themselves that we would include in our current general plan as attachment 2. These provisions need to be in our general plan by July of this year, and then we'll need to make further amendments to our zoning ordinance by July of next year to maintain in compliance, with SB 5 and the related flood bills. DWGAR's guidance has, definitely assisted us in this. However, we have prepared a lot of these policies, with our best estimates on how we would maintain compliance with our general plan. As many of you may know, we are, updating our general plan sort of holistically right now, but these proposed amendments would proceed on its own track with a separate environmental document because of the deadline of July of this year, because we will not have our overall general plan done by then. However, once we carry forth the entire general plan, these policies will roll over, into it. So tonight, we are seeking your input on the proposed policies, which are included again as attachment 2 to the staff report tonight. In anticipation, we will return to a subsequent meeting and a formal public hearing and seek your recommendation on this matter, as the City Council will ultimately need to take this up and make the related general plan amendments for us. We will also be getting input from one of the city's new commissions that has been established just recently. We'll be going there next month on this. So in attachment 2, it establishes, the first goal, which is a broad goal, and I think a goal that's, should be well understood and agreed to be important, which is to protect life and property from flooding. And then we have several policies as to how we will help achieve that goal there. I should note that the policy that's listed as EC 2.1-4 at the bottom of that first page, 200-year level flood protection. This has already been a goal. We amended our general plan several years ago to go to 200-year level protection. Even if 100 years has always been the standard, we want to do better than that, and so we're seeking 200-year protection. So that again is an existing goal of ours that we're sort of carrying forward. There are numerous other, broad level policy statements, in here to help achieve our various goals. They are broad, and there's always the temptation in general plan to try to get a lot more specific. And, the goal is to remain broad in a general plan and then use your implementation measures to focus those policies, in terms of implementation in the real world. So there are numerous policies in here, some of which will carry forth through into Climate Action Plan and have that overall relationship. So, because obviously our goal our general plan needs to be internally consistent. And so at this time, I'd like to invite the commission if they have any questions and to also take any public comment that may be here this evening from you. This matter has been coordinated with our partners at the West Sacramento Area Flood Control Agency. And so with that, I'll close my presentation and answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, David. This is a public workshop, so we are here to provide comments and input to staff. And at this time, I will open the public workshop. I do not have any requests to speak, so I will bring it to the commission, and I will start on my left with Ms. Austin, if you would like to start with any comments.
Yeah, I don't have terribly many comments. My understanding is that we're going to be having another kind of public hearing about this. At that time, I think that it would be important, and I think you alluded to it, but just to discuss, again, the involvement and concurrence of West Safeco, and again, in the instance that we have public comment, I think that questions of how it will affect homeowners and their insurance policies, although, not necessarily required, but definitely I'm sure a lot of folks have elective insurance policies. If you could just weigh in on that. I imagine that it's not, but just something to address. So,
Okay.
But thank you for your report.
Sure.
Thank you, staff, for their work.
Commissioner Kelter, do you have any comments? I understand that you're brand new on the commission, but if you have any comments, now would be the time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. David, I just have one sort of informal question about 2.1.16 about levy trees.
Yes.
I understand there's been some back and forth with the Corps about the acceptability of trees on levees, and this has gone back a number of years now.
Yes.
I've lost touch with the issue in the last year, 18 months. How's that discussion going? Has the Corps gotten to a point where they're more comfortable with trees on levees than they used to be?
I certainly hope so. I'm sort of looking at our RESAPCO representative here to see if he has any up-to-the-minute information on that particular topic, but this obviously recognizes our goal that, trees along the rivers are important from an environmental standpoint, habitat, et cetera, and then if at all possible, we want to retain that. And so if Mr. Wasafka has any input from where the Corps is on that particular topic, I'd like to hear it.
To be frank, this issue is unresolved. We're building a project that will have a setback levy, and it will not be forested. So we will be complying with our setback levy, where we have an existing levee and there are existing trees. We are trying to preserve all that we can, both for the purposes of mitigation, and obviously there are differences of opinion, but there's still some credibility to the fact that some trees do provide more stability to some levee surfaces. But otherwise, it's unresolved.
Thank you.
When it comes to the Army Corps.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all I have.
Thank you. Commissioner Tumper.
I don't have any comments.
Okay, I'll jump over to the other side. Commissioner Moore.
Thank you. David, I kind of came down to, on the second page where we're starting about 2.1.8, 9, 10, and it's talking about development and what we can do in the area of development. And how are we putting a moratorium on development?
No,
Because
absolutely not.
on 2.1.11, down towards the bottom, it said, "The city shall not approve new development or a subdivision or enter into a development agreement. And if that is true, I didn't know if that was overall or
Well,
what.
that is for any development that is located in a flood hazard area, a designated flood hazard area.
That's
So-
West Sacramento.
Well, and under the way, FEMA has, it depends on how the flood is zoned. The vast majority of our city is in what we call Zone X. But we do have some low-lying areas that are primarily existing waterways that are in Zone A. So to the extent somebody wanted to try to put a development in the Deepwater Ship Channel, for example, which is a flood, would be, in the Zone A, flood hazard area, that might be a problem. But otherwise, this is for areas that are within a flood hazard zone. And that's meant in a deliberate way, that not is just in an area of flood risk like this entire region is, but in a designated flood hazard area.
Okay, and, maybe when we get further into this, that may be something that we want to elaborate on just a little bit so we all understand what we're doing. Other than that, I'm fine with it. I think it's a good attempt to get what we have to have in place.
Thank you. Mr. Sternfeld.
Thanks for the report, David. More of a comment than a question, really. I'm wondering if there's a place otherwise in the general plan, or maybe this would be a place to try to make a connection between all of our land use policies around flood protection and also the opportunity of open space and recreation, or if that's addressed somewhere else.
Yeah, there most definitely is a relationship here, and I think that once we put the entire general plan in front of you, we'll be able to make those correlations, a little better. I recognize we're sort of looking at this in a vacuum, right now, but when we have it all in front of you, we'll be able to see that, and some of these policies will definitely overlap, the different parts of the general plan, which is good, because that's a good way to show how your general plan is internally consistent.
Thank you.
Commissioner Guerrero.
Thank you very much, David, for the presentation, and I appreciate, keeping the language pretty high level so that it can apply to the flexibility that we would need to adapt it. And one of the questions I have, and this is not out of concern, I think our city has done a tremendous job in taking leadership to address flood control issues here, because historically the city has had that. And they've done a great job from the beginning, and I think we were much ahead when it came to levee protection in preserving what we had and strengthening what we had. One of the questions I had is EC 2.1.21, the roadway systems as escape routes. And that's just, I read that and I thought, well, I don't even, we have our access ways out. And if you had any additional background, I was just curious.
Well, yeah, what this is sort of recognizing that in an emergency situation, you may need to take available all means of your existing infrastructure. We have looked at this sort of internally. For example, if there was a major event in Southport, Jefferson Boulevard may need to become 4 ways northbound, just to be able to, evacuate people, as an example. So what this is trying to, the main, objective behind this is trying to recognize that in an emergency situation, we may need to utilize, our infrastructure, particularly roadways, in a different manner. And being cognizant of the fact that those roadways in an emergency situation become escape routes potentially. And so we need to be mindful, of that. It's sort of similar if you go to a lot of coastal communities, well, they'll show routes where you're supposed to move inland in the event of a, tsunami or, things like that. Or, if you go to Florida or Hawaii and this is the way you go if a hurricane comes, that kind of thing. So this is being recognizing that in an emergency situation, we're going to need to do things a little differently than normal day-to-day life.
Yeah. Okay, very good. Thank you. And I remember in one of our last strong downpours, there was an alert in our city for some areas of our city where they would experience flood, and sandbags were being distributed. And do we have something in place that, in our general plan to help to address those emergency situations?
Yeah, we do certainly have the policies in there about maintaining that emergency communications system. It's a big part of it, and also the policy just about having an emergency preparedness plan.
Okay.
And so we continue to drill sort of internally when we're using if we'd have to open up the EOC, for example.
Okay.
So those are all the implementation measures of how we address that overall goal of safety and emergency preparedness.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Guerrero. I'd like to first second Commissioner Guerrero's comments regarding the city's success on the current flood control project, as well as navigating the recent federal and state policy changes. I think it's kept our city going, and I very much appreciate it. I do have a couple of questions, and then I think we can move on. But regarding, let's see, it's 2.1.12. This is regarding new development located within a special 100-year flood hazard. I think, Charlie, is this the one that you were asking about?
Well, they're kind of all together in that whole little group, Ross, yeah.
I have an image of what this is in my mind, but David, can you give me an example of what this development could be?
Well, it's conceivable that, if you were in a flood, an A-zoned, area of a community, someone could still want to try to put a development in there. And, usually if that occurs, then the way the flood zone itself has certain requirements that one needs to meet. It may mean elevating building pads, up to a certain level. There's a lot of different criteria in there. I mean, generally, you would not want to build in a 100-year floodplain, if you could help it. But it's fortunately we have very little of this air in our community that would actually be designated as such, and it's primarily the existing waterways in our community that would be currently in an A zone. So, but it's possible if somebody ever wanted to, start up some of the marina discussions again on some of the areas, that would be on the water side of the levee. We have some land in Southport that is on the water side of the levee, a little bit out there. Somebody could want to do something out there. I think our risk to this is fairly low because we just don't have very much land that's designated as such. But to the extent we did, we would want to make sure that that area was designed in a way that would minimize its flood risk.
Actually, that's what I was thinking of, is on the water side of the levee, and just designing things to basically be able to get wet. But I hadn't considered us even approving development within a 100-year floodplain.
Yeah, there is one area that, one developer is at least, toying with right now that currently is on the water side of the levee, and, we'll see if that proceeds, but that would be at least one example that comes to mind where this kind of stuff would be very much applicable.
Okay. Regarding 2.1.25, the flood risk notification. I think the city already does this, but I just want to make sure that we're not biting off something that we don't want to be obligated to.
And we do provide that information. There's information on our website, and we have some handouts at the counter, and I'm sure it goes out in some of the iLights publications. So we are able to communicate that, and have been for a number of years now, that you really should have flood insurance. Even if you don't have to, you really should.
Okay, I just want to confirm it wasn't an undue burden on the city. All right, so to kind of summarize comments that I've picked up on this evening, there was a comment regarding flood insurance. There was comment regarding trees on the levee. And actually, to add to that, I might recommend looking over at the current Safeca project going on. Their current project actually as written, requiring that trees be planted to fill in the gaps, including on the levee, but the levees have to be designed as such to accommodate that. So I'm sure you're aware of that, but I'm encouraged by the fact that we are moving in the direction of not stripping the trees and including them, because they do provide critical habitat to listed species, which then, of course, if you take them out, means you have an impact, and that slows down your levee project. So Okay. We, we heard that potentially when it comes back, and we put it in context of the overall general plan to possibly tie it in with the land use policy. And I think that was it, unless any of the other commissioners have any comments to add to this. Okay, at this point, I will close the public workshop. And David, do you have any follow-up that you would like?
No, other than we will take this to our new Environment something and Utilities Commission next month and be back to a public hearing next time in April at the Planning Commission before going to City Council.
Okay, all right. Again, this was just a workshop and information only. So moving on to item number 3, which is a public hearing regarding the consideration of recommended boundary for SACOG's 2036 MTPSCS update. And I did know what that was before, Metropolitan Transportation Plan and Community something.
Sustainable communities.
Thank you, Sustainable Community Strategies. David?
Yes, thank you once again. Tonight, we are here in a public hearing and seeking a formal recommendation from the Planning Commission on this matter before City Council consideration, likely in April. SACOG, which is the acronym for the Sacramento Area Council of Governments, is what's known as the Metropolitan Planning Organization for our region. And one of their primary, SACOG does many things, but one of their primary missions and why MPOs exist in the first place is to program federal dollars for transportation projects, within your region. And the way that's done is through what is known as the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. And this is a document that SACOG prepares on a regional basis throughout the 6-county region, of which, West Sacramento is a member of SACOG. And the Metropolitan Transportation Plan guides investment, transportation investment dollars on a regional basis over a long-term basis. So every 4 years, that document needs to be updated, and so SACOG is in that cycle now of where they're updating it. They tend to do an alternating thing where they do a major update, then kind of a minor update, and then a major update. So we're kind of in the minor update, cycle right now. The current MTP goes to 2035, and they're taking it presently now only to 2036 as part of their overall efforts. The MTP is obviously something we've had in the region for many years, but since the passage of SB 375 back in 2008, it's finally linking transportation investment with land use. And that's where the Sustainable Community Strategy, or SCS, comes into the picture. SB 375, amongst many things, also require compliance with certain greenhouse gas reduction targets for the region. And the SCS is a large part in how, on a regional level, how the region is going to achieve those objectives. And so now the MTP and SCS are essentially one animal that is maintained throughout the region and guides the transportation investment along with land use and employment forecasts and attempting to achieve the greenhouse gas reduction targets. So in SACOG, in updating this one of the reasons why they need to update the current plan is the current plan included a lot of growth forecasts that were sort of pre-recessionary, and so there was a fair amount of growth that was sort of assumed in there that really didn't happen. But also at this stage, in doing the greenhouse gas forecasts, with that level of growth in the plan, which everyone agreed was probably a bit aggressive when you count in the recessionary era, they need to make some adjustments into how much is included within the boundaries of the MTP-SCS. So on a regional basis, SACOG is asking local communities, including ours, to look at what boundaries ought to be included within the MTP-SCS, and particularly focusing on greenfield areas where the greenfield development is often, including having a lot of greenfield development, will make the greenhouse gas reduction targets difficult to achieve. So SACOG approached the city, and the city was amenable to considering some adjustments in the MTP-SCS boundary to help SACOG on a regional basis, along with other communities, help achieve the regional greenhouse gas reduction targets. So we have a proposed map for your consideration, which we're seeking your recommendation tonight on, and that's included as attachment 2 in the staff report. What this boundary essentially focuses the city on is infill development. And infill in this thing has a relatively broad definition. It's essentially those areas that are either, it can include raw, essentially raw land that's either bordered by existing development or is otherwise adjacent to infrastructure, but does not include, pure land that has no infrastructure, is not adjacent to any development of any sort. And so when we looked at our city, the map before you included attachment 2 meets the infill tests in the MTP SCS parlance. The commission will note that these border as prepared here does not include essentially the southeast village of Southport or the majority of the southwest village of Southport either. These are areas, although there have been approved projects in those areas, they have not made progress since they have been approved. And in our estimation, it's unlikely that they will make progress, at least over this MTP-SCS update cycle for the next 4 years. And it is likely that it will be longer until those projects come on board. And it's also likely that even if these areas were included within the MTP-SCS boundaries, they would be unlikely to be programmed for a lot of transportation fund investments, anyway, as they're, relatively low density, so outside the urban core for the large part. So the effect of this change in terms of on those projects is not particularly significant in our mind, because the whole point of being within the boundary is to be eligible for some of that programming, and that programming is likely to occur much more in the urban core and on rail projects, other transportation improvements that are on a much more regional scale anyway. So we have spoken with both of the development representatives in those areas, and discussed these matters with them. We believe their understanding of what is occurring here. This does not take away any of their entitlements. It does not change any of their zoning, and it does not prohibit them from proceeding if they were in a position to proceed today, tomorrow, or 2 years from now either. So as our recommendation to this boundary to you is part of how the city can contribute on a regional basis towards SACOG's effort to update the MTP and the SCS and to help SACOG achieve its mandated greenhouse gas reduction targets for the entire region. So with that, I'll close my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, thank you, David. Prior to opening the public hearing, are there any comments or questions from the commission? Ms. Guerrero?
Is there public comment?
No, but this is prior to me opening the public comment.
Okay. No, I just have a quick question, but I can do that after.
Okay, then I will go ahead, and at this time, I will open the public hearing. However, I do not have any requests to speak unless there are any additional. Seeing the head nod no, I will go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for deliberation. Ms. Guerrero, would you like to start?
Oh, sure, thank you. First of all, Mr. Tilley, I appreciate your background here that you've provided in the agenda. It's pretty much on target, I think, as far as the high-density infill development. And your presentation, your verbal presentation was very good. I agree with all the points you made. And good to hear that there are no limitations with this recommendation for future development. I just had a quick question regarding any challenges. I understand there might be challenges up front, but there are long-term payoffs. Do you have any insight on that particular issue?
I'm sorry, I'm not clear about the challenges that you're
Just
challenges you're referring to.
long-term benefit to the city, whether it be any, in any way that the city would benefit from, the higher density infill development, just challenges, either investments or things like that.
Well, certainly, we have put a lot of emphasis on infill development in our community, as well as within the region, and a large portion of our community, really could be considered infill. Everything we're doing in the Bridge District in Washington, West Capitol Avenue, and other areas is all infill and refill. And, those are, generally speaking, infill is considered to be a much more sustainable way to grow. It's more compact. It supports transit usage, and all of these things, go back to reducing, consumption of fuels, carbon emissions, greenhouse gases, and all of that. So, we are well-positioned in our region to grow as a whole, because West Sacramento, on a regional scale, remains extreme, proximity to the primary job center in the region, which is still downtown, and will be, long-term. So we're in a good position to grow in a sustainable manner, especially when you look at us on a regional basis. And so even though infill development can be challenging without a doubt and costly, I believe its benefits are most definitely there and indisputable.
Okay, and I think we are strategically positioned to do well, maybe even in a shorter period of time, as far as West Sacramento and working with Sacramento. Yeah, and that's it. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, are there any comments? This time I'll start on this side.
You got
Andrew,
me?
go ahead if you would like.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Just a question, Mr. Tilley.
Yes.
How would this impact potential grant funding or development of the Clarksburg Branch Line Trail, given that I think part of that trail would actually be outside of this map?
We did obtain funds to do that original paving, already, and those were, I think what they call CMAQ funding, which is a congestion management and air quality, funding. That was sort of independent of, through SACOG. There, as much as we would, we'll probably want to try to achieve some potentially some community design money from SACOG. That may very well go into other areas, higher priority areas. So, in our estimation, given what we have done here, there are other sources of funds that we can use on that may be unrelated to sort of the MTP SCS. And, there are zillions of projects in the MTP, and not all of them are able to be funded. But I'm confident, based on the funding we received already, to do that, and there will be other pots of money that we can get to that are outside of this.
So this map doesn't restrict our ability to apply for grant funding from SACOG for a project that would extend outside of it?
Well, there's different pots of money. And, what goes into MTP, there's the community design program, which is totally separate animal. That's paid for many things in our community, not the least of which was our street frontage, out here on West Capitol Avenue. So we'll investigate that particular provision further, but there are various pots of money out there that we can go to that would be independent of this.
Thank you, that's very helpful.
Mr. Moore?
David, I think the map is a great idea, and cutting off the southern part of it like that makes a lot of sense. My only question is, when we submit this map to SACOG, does this give SACOG any say in any of our development whatsoever?
No, we have retain our full authority here. It is definitely advantageous to have your general plan and growth be aligned with the MTP SCS, but we don't have to do that at all. But so this is to assist on our part of the regional basis, primarily for greenhouse gas reduction.
Thank you.
Looking at my left, any comments?
Of course, I'm going to comment on this. This is my bag. Yeah, so I'll make a couple comments. One is, I think that the city of West Sacramento and SACOG are really strong and excellent partners in promoting smart growth development. I'm supportive of the proposed map. I mean, it's fairly minor in my mind, and what I see is that this map essentially not restricting, but encouraging development and growth to happen within a slightly more compact area than just the city limits is very encouraging. I also want to underscore the fact that this map does not mean that we're going to build out all of these spaces. This process will go very well hand in hand with the general plan activities that are going on, and that I encourage the commissioners and the staff as well to be really engaged when we talk about where we're going to build, the particular land uses and the types of densities that going forward for our new general plan. Like I said, we don't have to build out all of these spaces. We can preserve areas for, agri-preserved open space, and we can put even more density in some areas that might be low or moderate level density currently. So anyway, thank you for your efforts, and I'm supportive of the map.
Any other comments? No? Okay, thank you. I also agree that this is a relatively minor change, while at the same time encouraging our policies of infill and not prohibiting existing projects that have already been approved. I do have one suggested change on the map. I think the map could be tightened up just a little bit. If, and I do want to get the commission's opinion on this. On the top left-hand corner, right underneath the notch, there's a triangle there. That is outside of the levee system, and I don't foresee us building outside of the levee system.
Where is, so
Okay, so the,
northeastern portion?
just above I-80, so just north of I-80, on the far eastern boundary, you'll see a green triangle. That is, yes, exactly. That is outside of our levee system, and I don't believe
Yes.
we will be developing that, nor do I see it as being part of any transportation plans that we're looking at. I drew out all the possible rail lines even that I could get, and I couldn't get them over that. So unless there's objection from staff or from the commission, I think we could actually tighten this a little bit more there.
You mentioned one part of it that that just sort of made me think about was rail. And that if we were ever to do the West Side Rail relocation project, which has been a long-standing goal of ours, it would occur in that vicinity, at least. I don't know if it would actually go through that area, or not, but would be my only hesitation. And of course, that project is not going to happen, anytime soon either. And so from staff perspective, I would be comfortable removing this. However, leaving it in would not necessarily hurt, either.
Either. We could recommend to council the map with consideration of that parcel and bringing up the rail line.
Yeah.
That's actually the one consideration I had is actually, and you should see my map, there's scribbles all over it. And I didn't get the rails to go through that triangle, but, I actually don't know the whole vision. So a recommendation to council with consideration of future rail realignment for that parcel would be.
Work on your cartography later.
It's lovely.
Cartography.
So, any other comments or questions?
When is the next opportunity to update this map?
We are making a recommendation here for council, and we see it back every 4 years.
Yeah, the MTP is updated every 4 years.
Again, this doesn't prohibit our development, as far as I can see.
So I'm thinking about your comment. Is the likelihood of any type of rail relocation going to happen in the next 4
Probably
years?
unlikely in 4 years, but, the planning for it is already underway, and it's on a regional scale. So if it were the commission's preference, we could carry this forth for final consideration by the council, and that will allow me a little more opportunity to see what the current rail plan is for that area. It certainly won't be built in 4 years.
I think that is a good idea. With that, I will,
I'd entertain the motion that we approve this map with the notation going forward that our chairman suggested to you, David.
moved by
And
Mr.
second?
Moore, seconded by Ms. Guerrero. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. This motion has passed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to informal discussion.
Sorry about that. So maybe Charlene, after the Affordable Housing Sustainable Communities applications, if the city put any applications forward, we could get a report back on maybe some of the things that we're working on. Like I said, this can happen after the applications go forward, but I'd be very interested just in hearing a brief staff report back on that.
Others?
I have a correction in the disclosure of ex parte communications. It was actually item number 3, not number 2, where I had a discussion with outside counsel.
Okay, thank you.
I'd make a motion, we adjourn.
Moved. I didn't vote on that.